by just starting to recognize I'm in a poor emotional place. I'm angry or one of these emotions that doesn't feel good, and try to choose to change that right there. You have the power.
You're listening to The Life and Money Show, a podcast that brings you the stories and strategies of people who are living a meaningful and intentional life by design, building true wealth for their families, and impacting the world around them. And now here are your hosts, Annie Dickerson and Julie Lamb.
Hey, everyone. Annie Dickerson here, and I'm joined by none other than Susan Elliott on the Goodegg team. Susan, how are you today?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here again with you. Get to talk a little bit about the philosophy behind investing and life by design and what's going on. It makes me think of the last time I recorded with you. I was in Mexico.
That's
and my
right.
family had spent 2 months in Mexico this past winter, our first time doing slow travel with our 2 kids.
Yes.
And now I'm standing here in my home office in the Pacific Northwest, and both places are really joyful for me. So
Yes.
It's good to be back.
You've got to tell the story about, was it the turtles? And oh my gosh, seeing those photos with your daughter. Oh my gosh, tell everybody
Oh my
a
goodness,
little bit more about that.
We were in Puerto Escondido, which is in the Oaxacan province down pretty far south on the Pacific coast in Mexico. And there are turtle conservation sites along there, as there are in many locations throughout the world. I actually worked in one when I was in university in Costa Rica. We did a couple different turtle conservation projects back when I was studying ecology and conservation resources. But you get to donate to the nonprofit like $5. I mean, it's not very expensive at all. And they have their latest hatchling set of sea turtles. I believe that they're leatherback sea turtles. I could be wrong there. And they allow you to basically be the ones to sort of tip them into the beach and watch them crawl off into the ocean. So I did that with my 5-year-old daughter and her 5-year-old friend. So 2 girls to be able to do that. And you have this little coconut shell that they scoop the turtle into, and she's holding it like a precious little life in front of her and walking. And hers is very feisty. So it's trying to climb out of the bowl. And so she's like, Mommy, help me. She doesn't want to drop it. And so I got to carry it a little bit too, which I secretly adored. You stand at the rope. They don't want you to go into the ocean with the turtles. But they do want the turtles to be able to walk their way down the sand and find their way into the ocean, just not get distracted by the resorts or the buildings or the people or all these things that are killing off all the sea turtles around the world. And she got to experience like what that part of the life cycle of a creature and touch it and see it. We saw sea turtles kind of floating out in the ocean when we did a boat trip later. So there was a little bit of like, look, that's one of the ones that were released 5 years ago. And for her to have that experiential type of education was why we do these kinds of trips. It's a big part of my family's life, and doing all of our adventure travel and rafting and skiing and just to experience the world right there in the middle of it. It was precious.
It's not something you can learn out of a textbook, or even like scrolling on social media, watching somebody else do it is just not the same as holding that little turtle in your own hands and getting to experience it. She's never going to forget that. That's amazing.
I don't think so. I wanted to go back and do it again. Yeah. And actually, I think Quentin on our team is going to get to do the same thing next week. He is also in Puerto Escondido, and he said, I'm going to go do that turtle thing. Yeah. And I was like, you have to go and do it.
When we were in Mexico, they had like at the resort where we were staying, they had this little area for it, but they didn't currently have any turtles there when we were there. So we'll definitely have to go back. But we did get to swim with dolphins. That was a really very cool experience, although very different because it's not like dolphins in the wild in an enclosure, but still very, very cool. I have such a fascination with the ocean and all the treasures and the things in there that,
Someone once described the ocean to me as like, and standing on the beach specifically, you're looking out at the world's largest wild landscape. Or the world's largest wilderness area.
Yes.
And I don't think of it as that, but it is such a vast unknown to even the people that study it for their whole lifetimes. I just love that there's things like that in life that we'll never know about, but that we can chip into. And then watching our kids do it, it's beautiful.
I know. Well, I'm going to pull the string through because with the immersive experience of being there, doing it yourself, and also the fascination and the mysteries of the ocean. It's like the mysteries of our minds. And so today we're going to talk about our recent experience. Our team attended Tony Robbins' event, his premier event, Unleash the Power Within, which Julie and I have been to a number of times. And for some on the team, including you, Susan, it was your first time. So we'll definitely get to dive into that and share sort of both perspectives. But for the listener, as you know, we've talked about on the show many times how mindset is such a huge part of anything that you do, whether it's launching your own business, growing your business, or it's investing, or maybe you're investing on the path to being able to quit your own job and start a business or start a side project or launch a passion project. And that mindset piece is huge. I didn't know how big it was until I got into this space. And Susan, I know you've launched a business as well. So you know, it's all about the mindset, figuring out the little pieces like how to do this or how to set up an LLC. That's simple compared to all of the voices in your head constantly bringing back up childhood wounds or things that you've experienced in the past. And so I'm thrilled to have the opportunity today to dive in with you. But first, for our listeners, we got a couple of things we want to make sure you know about. So the first is we know you have a lot of choices when it comes to investing. And while we hope that you will invest alongside us, we definitely don't take that for granted. We know you have a lot of choices and we want to show you the track record and the experience that we have in this space, especially at a time now when the financial landscape is shifting. And so as part of that, we want you to do your own due diligence and ask your own questions to find a team, whether it's us or another team that you trust to invest with, because taking action, especially at times like this, will make all the difference. There's tremendous opportunity out there, but we were just talking about mindset. There's also tremendous fear. And so definitely stay tuned for the rest of this episode. We're going to cover a lot on mindset, but if you're in that place where you're looking for potential investment opportunities, looking for potential groups to invest with, we invite you to come learn more about us here at Goodegg Investments. And to do that, a great place to start is with our case studies and our track record. We've put all together case studies of all the deals we've exited, 20 to date. And so you can see all in one place our original projections as well as the actual returns that we were able to pay out to investors. So you can start to wrap your head around who we are, what we're all about, and what we can help you achieve, most importantly, in your life on your path to achieving your goals. So to get your copy of that, go to goodegginvestments.com/track record. If you are already at a point where you're ready to invest, we also wanted to let you know we do currently have an offering open. It's our Goodegg Wealth Fund 2. It's a multifamily equity fund where we'll be investing in multiple multifamily assets in key Sunbelt growth markets that are experiencing a lot of job growth, population growth. And so to invest alongside us in that opportunity, go to goodegginvestments.com/fund2. That's goodegginvestments.com/fund and the number 2. All right. With that, let's dive in because there's so much to talk about anytime that you talk about Tony Robbins. I think UPW Unleash the Power Within is actually his shortest event and it's 4 full days. So Susan, full
12-hour days.
12 plus hours.
They don't publish an agenda for a reason.
There's no agenda. You're on Tony time. So tell us, Susan, what was that like coming into this for the first time? Were you familiar with Tony's teachings from before? Had you done other mindset work? And coming into this, what was that like? It's unlike any other virtual experience. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I have done a lot of mindset work in the past. And I think that, which I'm grateful for, because it is so easy to focus on the business tactics and the strategy. But if you can't take action because of something that's holding you back subconsciously that you don't even know about, or your energy is so low that you just can't get something done that day, then you're not taking action. That strategy doesn't matter. So I've done one other in-person kind of similar style retreat, but just nothing compared to the amount and the energy level. And I was so impressed. This was virtual. And then that was an in-person event.
Yeah.
And so we were getting up and moving our bodies because you have to put yourself into that peak state. And that is physiological. That was a big takeaway I had from this past weekend. But he was able to facilitate that virtually and as well, like connect people across the world virtually and make you feel like he actually is thinking about this content every time he does these seminars. This is not canned content. So it was great. I didn't expect the massively long days.
Yeah.
And as a mom at home, that was a really big challenge for me to carve out my time. But I think on the other side of that, it was so beneficial to do it with my daughter a little bit too, and have her in the room and listening. And my husband listened in on some of it too. So it really felt like it was a little bit more holistic in that way.
Yeah, it is kind of a trade-off because when you do it at home, you don't quite get that full immersion of being in a stadium with 15,000 people all jumping up and down at the same time with the lights and the music. But you do get to include your family, which is so cool. And it's something I've done as well. I think this is the 4th virtual one I went to. I've only been to one in-person event back in, I think Julie and I went back in 2019, and we were going to go again in 2020, actually. And we were going to go in person. And I think it was literally the week right after the shutdowns happened. And so, of course, Tony, prior to this, he had never canceled an event in 40 years of doing this. And so he was like, no, it's going to be fine. We're going to figure out a way. Don't worry, guys. Everything's going to be fine. I don't know what this pandemic thing is about, but we're going to keep doing this event. And then like in the days leading up, he was like, oh, we got to cancel it. And I remember him because he's told this story many times of at that point, he kept trying, right? Like he was like, okay, well, they shut down this place. Okay, we're going to move to this other place. Oh, they shut down that other place. Okay, let's go here. Until it was like whack-a-mole. And finally he was like, okay, we've got to figure out a new model to do this. And what I love about that story, like so many of his stories, is that he wouldn't take no for an answer. He didn't quit. And he wasn't like, well, the world's shut down. So we're just going to take a pause for a year until this thing, 2 years, 3 years, going on many years now, until this thing blows over. And then we'll just keep doing it the same way we always have. But he was so open to, okay, let's figure out a different way. Let's evolve. And also continuing to hold those high standards because he very well could have been
that's
like,
what I was going to add. He was like, this is going to be a virtual event, but it's going to be the best in the world.
Yeah.
And if this is where the world is going, I am going to lead it. And we are going to create more transformations or get more people involved and do even bigger and better. And so just like speaking to his personality and the tools that he's giving you to help your own personality and your own emotional state get into that place where like you're not seeing setbacks, you're seeing opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one thing you touched on was this concept of a peak state. And at certain points, he leads up to and talks about it as a beautiful state. So maybe if anybody listening hasn't heard of what a peak state or a beautiful state is, what did you take away from that? And what does that mean to you?
Yeah. I think I had heard about Tony Robbins priming type of activities because there's some YouTubes out there. And I would suggest that everyone go to do Tony's 10-minute priming meditation before you start work tomorrow. That is my task. And that you're getting yourself into that peak state. So a peak state is physiological, it's mental, but you're getting yourself to this energy level where you kind of feel like you can take on the world. He's saying that that's not just a good thing to do before you go on stage to give a talk. It's like a good thing to do before you have dinner with your family. That's a good thing to do first thing in the morning. Like you need to be at a peak state almost in everything that you're doing in order to have this extraordinary life by design. I mean, maybe you could do it before you go to work and then your work and your mission will be great, but you got to do it family life. You got to do it at home. You got to do it where you're serving others. So for me, that peak state is I tapped into the physical side of it really well. And what he has you dancing around your living room. He's got dancers on stage. You're leading you. And I'm just like, this is great. I love this kind of stuff. I would go to like the dance class down the road every day if I could. I'm training for ultra marathons. Like physical activity is a big source of joy for me. But I had always seen that as something that I could gift to myself when I accomplish my goals, not in order to accomplish my goals. And so coming out of that event, that was a huge takeaway for me that like, I'm actually going to be better at everything I'm doing because I'm such an active person, because I know my body and how I can get into my peak state really quickly. So that's peak state. Yeah.
I love that you mentioned that it's not just mental, it's physiological. And I think that's the part that a lot of people miss out on. They're like, okay, well, I can psych myself up, or I can say affirmations, or I can do the positive psychology stuff, and I can get myself out of my head and into this space. But it really is a full body experience. It's like the body language, it's the stance that you take, it's having that full confidence and showing up as your best self. And as Tony says, playing full out.
Mm-hmm. Make your move.
That's right.
Like kind of like a power move.
Okay, you got to show us what's your move? Because I made up this. Okay, full disclosure, when Tony was first talking about this at the very first UPW I went to, I actually zoned out for a little bit when he was talking about this. So then he goes, okay, now make your move. And I'm like, what does he mean? And he does this thing on stage because it's his move, right? And then so I kind of adopted it. So mine's kind of like this punching, like I kind of do this kind of a thing, but it's become like every time I do it, it's like hardwired into my body now.
Oh, neat. It's not hardwired into mine. I think I too got caught off guard. Like, make your move. And I just sort of like throw out my arms.
Yeah.
Like, make a move. But there's a lot of like bringing my fists down and my knee up in the air.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Move. But as I go, I could see too, it becoming a triggered response. Like, and so instead of spending 10, 15 minutes getting my body into a physiological peak state, moving it, jumping around, I can actually just make my move 2 or 3 times and then I can go into that meeting. I could do that before every meeting.
Totally. Yeah. And for the listener who has no idea what we're talking about, this is just like Susan said, it's a power move. And what Tony through his teachings does is it's like this hard wiring into your body where he's doing his neuro-linguistic programming thing, NLP, where he's tapping into that movement to build that muscle memory to help you get into that peak state or that beautiful state more readily and make it more accessible. And so if you don't have one, try it. Just make a move that makes you feel powerful and then maybe come back to that every time. You're like, I just need a little something. Try that. And over time, maybe that will become your thing. When you're going into a meeting, you're nervous. You're like, make my move. And then it's just a little something to get you back into that peak state.
Absolutely. Well, yes. And then the second state you brought up was the beautiful state. And I think that since this is my first session learning about this, you'll have to also add to this here. But I took away beautiful state as more of like your mental and emotional sort of baseline. Mm-hmm. And you always want to come back to a baseline where you are not perturbed by things. I mean, you are not letting things perturb you, but you're doing that by not assigning a good or a bad preference almost to things. And by removing that, so maybe someone does something and I immediately say like, why did they do that? Or I get into sort of an angry place, or I'm allowing myself to be upset by something that happened outside of my control. And so the more that you can stop and say, oh, wait a minute, I'm saying that that's a bad thing. And therefore I'm causing my emotional train to go off the tracks. I like that he says, take 90 seconds, feel that state, that negative state, and then decide to feel a different way about it. And so you're deciding to be in this beautiful state at all times. And this, I think, is a lifetime of work to keep in that. The beautiful state is that constant, people meditate for decades to be able to remove their immediate preference, their immediate sort of judgment upon all action. But it doesn't mean that we can't start today, even if you're not meditating, even if you're not doing that, by just starting to recognize I'm in a poor emotional place. I'm angry, or one of these emotions that doesn't feel good, and try to choose to change that right there. You have the power.
Have you been thinking about investing in real estate, but aren't sure you have the time or the desire to manage the investment? Perhaps you're afraid, like we were, that you'll make the mistake of choosing the wrong mortgage or the wrong team and lose your entire investment. Well, that's exactly why we created the Goodegg Investor Club. We do the work of identifying solid real estate investment opportunities in the best markets around the country, and then partner with you to acquire these investments, and then we'll all share in the returns. We'll identify the growing markets, strong, experienced teams, and the solid deals. We do all the heavy lifting of managing the tenants and the renovations, and as a passive partner, you get to enjoy all the benefits of investing in real estate, monthly cash flow, long-term appreciation, and the ongoing tax benefits. When we first discovered passive investing through real estate syndications, we realized it fit perfectly into our busy lives. We could put our money to work for our families, work less, and get more time back in our days so that we could focus on what matters most and discover our true passion and purpose in life. We've now helped hundreds of people invest passively in real estate syndications and are seeing the positive impact it's had on their lives. We invite you to partner with us by joining the Goodegg Investor Club today so you can start putting your money to work for you and get more time back in your day, because we know that when people have more time in their days, they can do the true work they were intended to do, and the world will be a better place. To sign up for the Goodegg Investor Club, go to goodegginvestments.com/invest and we'll take it from there. That's goodegginvestments.com/invest.
And I think this is so relevant, especially right now with all the headlines, everything going on. Everywhere you turn, there's something looking to perturb you and disturb your emotional peace. And, it's very, very easy to go down that rabbit hole and get stuck and be like, well, I'm scared of everything. I can't do anything. And he talks about how the opposite of a beautiful state is suffering. And everybody has their favorite flavors of suffering. It can be guilt, shame, anger, resentment. The list goes on, but everybody has their sort of go-tos that they often fall into as a habit. And so, especially right now with the world, so much happening in the world, it's very easy to fall into that place. But that's the importance of building up that muscle of your beautiful state so that you're aware. Number one, as you're talking about, you're aware that you're going to that place of suffering, and then you can experience that, but then bring it back and understand what's really true and what is under your control. And then from there, choose to be in a beautiful state. And it's a constant choosing because as you know, as soon as you master at one level, life's going to be like, oh, you got that under control. Okay. Let me throw some bigger things at you.
Level 2. Here you go.
That's right.
I like that you brought it back to this current day. And so how that might look is that you might say, oh, I just got some bad news about the economy or what's going on. And you get a little fearful, especially in this economy, right? Fear is one of those places where it causes us to retreat. And maybe I don't take an action, even though I know my long-term goal is to have my investments making X amount of income per year to give me the freedom that I desire to take on that big mission project that I want to do, life project, or to just be with my family in a different capacity. But today, if your beautiful state is causing you to live in fear or live in uncertainty, instead of saying, oh, I'm unsure about that doesn't feel good. What can I do or feel instead? Well, like, okay, maybe I can research something a little bit more. Maybe I can ask a question. Maybe I can understand that fear so that I can continue to take action towards my goals. So yeah, it's easy to get caught up in like, oh, that's just who wants to work on their mental state or like trying to be happy all the time. It's not about that. It's about preventing yourself from not taking the action that's going to lead you to your goals.
Yeah. They say is courage is not having no fear. It's taking action even in the face of fear. And so if you can get to that place, that's where nobody's going. And if you can go where nobody's going, that's where you're going to see the results that nobody is seeing. And so that's what this is all about. But tell us about some of your other takeaways, your insights, your observations that you're taking away from this event.
First of all, I didn't understand Tony's level of expertise in this space. And he calls himself out too. Everybody just says, oh, you're the motivator.
Right.
Like you're the motivational speech guy. But he has just more than any other person on the planet has researched this and lived it and done it and invested in it and created these teams, multiple teams and businesses around this so that he understands every component about why people take action and how people live these like beautiful state lives, right? Why can't we all get there? So what I really liked about this event was him kind of lifting that curtain as far as saying like, it's possible for you to do this. I am a human. You're a human. I was this way with my limiting beliefs. All of you, we could all do this. It's the same idea as like, we all have the same number of hours in every day. Yet there's some people that take massive action and sort of why do they do that? And just getting to say that like, oh, wait, I think that might be possible for me too. And then them emphasizing, so what are you going to do to make that possible now after this event? So I took away one of the things that I think about are my levers. He talked about you need leverage to get to this massive success. And we talk about having leverage in real estate, right? Like use these tools that are going to help you grow further, faster by joining in a group to invest in something that you wouldn't have access to, getting the right debt structures, especially in an economy today, to be able to leverage the power, your buying power, right? But for me, leveraging my peak state, my movement, right? Now that I see that as kind of an asset and less of a side thing that I like to do, I'm going to use that to my advantage. I'm going to go for my runs before work as often as I can, or I'm also going to use, like, my lever is my team too. I mean, to be a part of the Goodegg team is phenomenal. I have access to some of the best people in the industry and here for my own investing I'm talking about. So for my own trajectory towards my life by design, I feel so grateful to be a part of this elevated community of investors and financial experts. So those were some of my levers that I decided I can go further if I take advantage of these or if I just tap into them.
And as you're talking about that, it's reminding me of something that really stuck with me this time around, which, you hear things over and over again, but sometimes it's not the right time to stick with you. But this time, something that really was very meaningful for me was from day one, he talked about the success cycle and talk about fear, right? This is a big part of that. For the listener, this is a cycle for you to reach your massive success, your highest and best. And so it's a cycle. So there's no real beginning or end, but there's 4 main pieces to it. And one piece is confidence, right? If you have this absolute certainty and belief that something is going to happen, then what will happen as a result of that? Then you have massive potential. So that's the next piece, is you have all this potential because you're like, oh my gosh, I believe in this. I know this to be true. And this is, to bring it to a personal example, this is exactly what happened when I quit my job so that we could start Goodegg. I had spent months and months researching. I had done my own personal investments. I knew that it was working. I talked to all these people. And I built up that certainty that even though I had never done a syndication deal before at the time that I quit my job, even though I had never raised any capital before, I had that certainty that I could figure it out one way or another. And so I quit my job because that was a massive action. It was massive potential because I had that certainty. So I had that certainty, which led to the potential, which led to the action. And then that action reinforced it because then through that action, I saw results. Julie and I partnered up later that year. We were off to the races. I think that first year we did 9 or 10 deals, raising $500K to $1 million per deal. And we saw the results and we're like, oh my gosh, this is working. This is growing. People are loving this community that we're building. Let's keep doing it. Right. And so we had this certainty, again, coming back through that cycle. And we had that elevated certainty. We were like, oh my gosh, we're certain we can continue to do bigger deals and we can continue to grow the team. And it continued. And that cycle, when I bring it back to what we were just talking about with the fears of investing and taking action right now, I think that success cycle is just as relevant there, because if you realize that you have fear right now, you have a lack of certainty, and figure out what you need to get to a place of certainty. And maybe it's talking to people, maybe it's joining groups like Susan just mentioned, maybe it's doing research and talking to other investors or talking to other groups, and then getting to a place where you're like, I am so certain in this right now. And that's going to change your potential. That's going to lead you to take action. And that's going to make all the difference.
Yeah, I love that. I've been curious at what you pull out as your fifth time going through this event. As you were talking, I pulled up my notes on that section and I had almost forgotten about it, probably because it was day one. That feels like a year ago. But and visualizing those results that you want with certainty. So instead of visualizing the potential of what could happen to your investments in an uncertain economy, visualize what could, because there are people in every economy who do well, right? And so what do you need to do to be one of those people? And the first thing you need to do is just start believing that you are one of those people.
Yes, exactly. And that brings up another one of my major, I don't know if it was a takeaway so much as a reminder and an exercise that's always valuable to do, which is, as you just said, picture yourself as one of those people and visualize what that means for your life. And as part of this is an exercise I don't do nearly as often as I should, but every time I do it, I'm like, this is so amazing, which is just visualizing that all the limitations away, everything in your life right now that says, I can't have this, I can't do this. Just put that aside for a second and then think about what is that ideal life that you would want to live and you would want to build for yourself. What does an extraordinary life look like for you at the next level? And I remember, I'm sure it's different from the first time that I did this, but a lot of things have stayed and continued. But this time around, it was now that we've the first time we went to UPW, we were just at the beginning of building the business. And so it was a lot about like building this business, having this impact. And while there's still a lot of room to grow, and we're certainly doing that, it was a different perspective this time going in. I'm like, okay, we've seen all this growth. Okay, but what does it mean for me? What does it mean for my life? And what do I want at that next level? What does that extraordinary life look like? And so it's just so magical to just take a moment to crystallize that and to send that out to the universe, whether you believe in that or not, but to raise your vibration, send that out to the universe so that it can come back to you. Something we talk about with all of our investors is like, what do you want out of this? Forget the real estate for a second. What do you want your life to look like? And I think that's such a powerful, powerful exercise.
Yeah, we really don't understand how much we're taking action towards goals that we don't even have.
Yeah,
I think. And so if you're like, wait a minute, what do I want out of this? How will that make me feel? And maybe that's something you don't actually want, or a way to kind of like play out those future scenarios without having to have actually lived them. So I actually have a request from our podcasting crews, because I know that there's a lot of people that listen to this show who do this type of exercises, who understand the power of all the mindset work that complements the strategy. So as I'm visualizing my results, it's quite easy for me to visualize where I want to help Goodegg grow and the things I can do with Goodegg, with investor education. So that's pretty easy for me to just put myself in those positions and see how I can help you all as the investor. It's also quite easy for me to see and envision myself crossing the finish line to some of these running events that I want to do. But what is trickier for me to visualize the results, just because it's a little bit less tangible, is like my goal is to continue to develop strong family bonds with my kids and my husband. I want us to be just like this tight unit where we're here for each other always. And we all know and trust that in the deepest part of our hearts, and to do that, we go on adventures together, we travel together, we spend time together. But if anybody has any tips about how they visualize or see the way that they want their family to be, maybe even with kids who are a little bit older, I have a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old. So we're just kind of figuring out what life is, especially with the 1-year-old and having 4 of us now. But I'd love to hear other people's visualizations of where they want to take their lives with that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's such a good, we invite all of our listeners, if you have any thoughts, ideas, tips, or how you're doing it with your family or questions that you have, you can always reach us anytime. We're at podcast@goodegginvestments.com, and you can reach out to us, send us your ideas. We'd love, love, love to hear them. All right. Well, before we wrap up, Susan, any last thoughts, takeaways, advice you want to share with the audience that we haven't covered yet?
Take cold showers.
Yeah. Yes.
I think we all hear that and see it's how silly it is. But I'm trying to take back my mornings, because I'm still a nursing mother whose child wakes up in the middle of the night at who knows how many times sometimes. And I'm a very productive early morning person. And I thought maybe I can't get up and run or meditate, but I can get up and take a 30-second cold shower every day. So little things.
I
move the needle.
That. That's something. And it's that little, that story they tell, or the parable, I guess they tell about the little domino, and then you can knock down a domino twice its size. And then sooner or later you're like at the moon or whatever. But it's kind of the same. Like I was just talking about me taking back my mornings too, because I've fallen off that wagon. And I literally last night before I went to bed, I practiced it physically and in my head. I was like, okay, when the alarm goes off tomorrow, and I reached over it and I was like, okay, here's my phone. I'm going to swipe right and not swipe left, because left is snooze and right is turn off. And then at that moment, I'm going to be like, okay, I've committed. I can't go back to sleep. And then I actually practiced this because to my husband, I was like, okay, then at that point, after I turn it off, I'm going to hit you. So you wake up too. And then at that point, I'm going to jump out of bed and you're going to do it too. And we practiced it like a couple of times. And this morning, the alarm went off. And that's exactly what we did because we had rehearsed it.
Awesome. And tomorrow, you have to get out of bed and then make your move, Annie.
That's right. Oh, I love that. I'm going to add that. I'm totally going to add that. That's so good. I'm going to make my move. And then I'm going to go into my priming. That's right. I love that. But for anybody listening, if you have not been to a Tony Robbins event here at the Goodegg team, we're big Tony fans, big fans of mindset. You can learn all the strategy in the world, but if you don't have the right psychology, the right mindset, you're not going to see those results. And so whether it's mindset for investing, for your W-2 job, for a side hustle or passion project, you don't have to go full out to a 4-day long or 6-day long event, but start by just Googling or looking up on YouTube, Tony Robbins, seeing what it's all about. And then we hope that maybe you'll join us for one of these events because our team goes every year virtually, hopefully back in person someday soon. But we'd love for you to join us. And if you have been, email us, tell us about your experience. We would love to hear your takeaways and insights. And if we'd love to feature you on the podcast as well, because we know mindset is so important. We would love to hear your stories and your insights. And again, just email us at podcast@goodegginvestments.com. We would love, love, love to hear from all of you. Before we wrap up, just a final reminder. If you are in a place that you're ready to invest, we would love to get to know you and see how we can help on your investing journey, help you reach your goals. And as Susan has mentioned, to create and unlock that meaningful and intentional life by design, whatever that looks like for you. And so to learn more and to join our Goodegg Investor Club, go to goodegginvestments.com/invest. All right. With that, to all of our listeners, Susan, do you have any last words before we wrap?
That's it. Thanks for creating the company and just the group, the investor club who values this kind of stuff. So,
indeed, we've got a pretty good tribe, don't we? All right. Well, for all of our listeners, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Life and Money Show. Hopefully you got a few good takeaways. And remember Susan's homework that she assigned, which was go and do the priming. Go try it out. Google Tony Robbins priming and maybe a 10-minute video. I'm sure you can find it and try it out. Because who knows, maybe it'll get you in that peak state and make all the difference for that meeting or that family dinner or whatever it is. And maybe that will be the thing that changes your whole day. All right. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Life and Money Show.
Thanks, everyone.
You've been listening to The Life and Money Show, the #1 podcast for people who, like you, are living a meaningful and intentional life by design, building true wealth, and making an impact in the world. For more resources, check out goodegginvestments.com and be sure to join the Life and Money Show community on Facebook. And if you got value out of the show, please subscribe and give us a 5-star review so we can continue to bring you amazing new conversations.